This is Men's Health Month, and I know you in the past have talked a lot about taking control of your health. You've lost weight, you look good. You were up to 350 at one point, right?
I was.
What does a healthy Rick Ross look like? How are you taking control of your health right now?
Well, it's just really, for me, it's all about your diet. You know, and a lot of times I break the rules.
Ross built an empire stacked with millions, but behind the Maybachs and the mansion gates, the man was falling apart inside. Seizures, wild shootouts on his own birthday, and enemies lining up to air out his deepest secrets, it was chaos behind the luxury. The biggest boss almost lost everything, even his life. But what pulled him back from the edge will shock you. Let's break it down. This is the story of the boss who nearly flatlined. When you hear Rick Ross, you instantly picture success, the name dripping with power, wealth, and Maybach music vibes. The mansions, the diamonds, the private jets, that's the dream life most people only imagine living. But hold up, behind all the bottles popping and the fancy meals, there's a story that cuts deep. A story about a man who faced death not once, but multiple times, and somehow came back stronger every single time. William Leonard Roberts II, born January 28, 1976 in Clarksdale, Mississippi, grew up to be more than just a rapper. But it was in Carroll City, Florida, where his hustle started to shape him into the boss we know today. His come-up was fire, but the road to the throne, it almost cost him his heartbeat. Down in the rough trenches of South Florida is where the man we know as Rick Ross was truly shaped. Growing up in those streets, young William had his eyes on something way bigger than his situation. He wasn't just talking about surviving, he was plotting on thriving. Before the fame, before the flash, he was out there grinding, playing football at Albany State University, chasing dreams while juggling real-life struggles. But here's the twist. Before he ever dropped a single bar, he was clocking in at a regular 9 to 5.
And most definitely, that's what's really driving me. The fact that I've had a seizure and, you know, I woke up, you know, from being unconscious on the toilet before. And I've never even spoke on this, but I suffered from seizures a long time. Like I said, I've deprived myself of rest, no sleep, maybe 2 to 3 hours on a good night, you know, staying up, chasing my dreams. I always thought I had the best excuses, but don't nothing come before life in itself.
5 job. That same gig would later blow up into one of his biggest controversies ever. Wild, right? But we'll get into that part soon enough. Then came 2006, the year everything flipped. Rick Ross dropped Hustlin', and that track didn't just hit, it exploded. It became the street anthem for everyone fighting to make it out the mud, capturing the raw spirit of Miami's grind. Suddenly, this dude with the deep, commanding voice was everywhere. You couldn't turn on a screen or radio without hearing him. His debut album, Port of Miami, stormed straight to #1 on the Billboard 200, announcing to the whole rap game that a new boss had arrived. But here's the truth about chasing that bag and going all in for greatness. Nobody tells you the price that comes with it. Sometimes the same hunger that lifts you to the top is the very thing that starts tearing you apart from the inside. Rick Ross wasn't just building an empire, he was slowly breaking himself down without even realizing it. The warning signs were flashing bright long before anyone around him wanted to face the truth. Check this out. When Ross spoke about his struggles, it came straight from the heart. That was real pain talking, the kind that forces you to stop and question everything you've ever done. Every late night, every deal, every choice suddenly feels heavier when your own body starts fighting back. That's the kind of pain you can't fake, the kind that changes how you see life itself. Then came October 14th, 2011, the day everything shifted for the biggest boss. While traveling, Ross suffered not 1, but 2 seizures within 6 hours. The first one struck mid-flight from Fort Lauderdale to Memphis, and chaos broke out in the cabin. Imagine this, one of the biggest stars in the rap game, unconscious on a commercial flight attendants scrambling to perform CPR just to keep him alive. It was a terrifying scene that showed how fragile even the strongest can be. As the plane made that emergency landing, chaos filled the air. Rick Ross was completely unresponsive. They literally had to bring him back from the edge of death. Just when everyone thought the worst was over, when it looked like he was finally bouncing back, boom, another hit. A second seizure struck on a different flight, forcing an emergency hospitalization in Birmingham, Alabama. 2 seizures, 6 hours, 1 single day. That could have been the last sunrise Ross ever saw. The craziest part? He didn't even remember what happened. That's how far gone he was, so disconnected from his own body that it was literally shutting down without warning. At first, doctors chalked it up to exhaustion and lack of sleep, the typical overworked artist story. But later, Ross came forward with something much darker. He admitted that what went down wasn't just about stress, it was made worse by his own choices, including substance use that pushed his body past the limit. It was a harsh wake-up call that even the biggest boss isn't untouchable. 2 to 3 hours of sleep on a good night? Just think about that for a second.
Well, this show and myself have had some beef with people over the years.
That's a good thing.
That happens when you speak your mind.
Right.
You've had some high-profile drama with people like 50 Cent, T.I., Nicki Minaj. Have you called a truce with any of these, and what lessons have you learned?
That's not grinding, that's straight-up self-destruction. While Ross was out there building Maybach Music Group, signing heavyweights like Meek Mill and Wale, dropping hit after hit and stacking his empire, behind closed doors he was running on fumes. He was sipping that lean, codeine syrup mixed with other substances, convincing himself it was just part of the hustle, part of the price you pay to chase that bag. But that mindset was eating him alive from the inside out. In his 2019 memoir, Hurricanes, Ross opened up about the truth. Years of codeine use had him trapped. He admitted he started using to deal with the insane pressure of fame, the non-stop beefs and the chaos that came with being the biggest boss. But when you mix that with alcohol, other substances, and almost no sleep, it becomes a deadly cocktail. His body was giving out and he didn't even see it coming. That scare back in 2011, that was just the warning shot. The real wake-up call hit 7 years later, and it nearly ended everything. On March 2, 2018, at around 3:34 a.m., Rick Ross was found unresponsive inside his Miami mansion. The 911 call that came in was pure panic. The person on the line said he was breathing heavy, foaming at the mouth, and might have lost control of his body. It was a terrifying moment that made the whole world realize even a boss can break down. When the paramedics pulled up to Ross's mansion, things got wild fast. He was so out of it that they got combative, forcing the medics to call for police backup just to get him safely to the hospital. At first, word spread it was pneumonia, but as more details dropped, it became clear this was way deeper than that. Doctors suspected a possible heart attack, and Ross had to be placed on ECMO, short for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, basically life support when your heart and lungs stop doing their job. Think about that. The biggest boss in the rap game, the man who built an empire from the ground up, was lying on a hospital bed hooked up to machines just to stay alive. That's how close he came to losing it all. Ross later revealed that when he came to, he was completely out of his mind. He woke up from that seizure, saw police standing nearby with their weapons drawn, and for a second he really thought he had died. He believed the ops had pulled up on him and that he was looking at the afterlife. That's how deep his confusion ran, his body and mind totally disconnected from reality. But if you thought that was the end of it, think again. In his upcoming 2026 memoir, Renaissance of a Boss, Notes from a Creative Reawakening, Ross opens up about yet another terrifying moment, a fresh seizure that hit in 2022. Even after all he'd been through, the fight for his health was still far from over. This time, the scare hit from something totally unexpected, psychedelic mushrooms.
When we got that call that morning, we were given misinformation. They was actually doing CPR at the time, and they had turned the airplane around in Atlanta. That was the wrong information that we got initially, and it was devastating. Because when you hear CPR, you know you're losing a person.
Ross said the trip went left real quick, leading to another emergency landing after he suddenly blacked out mid-flight. He later called it one of the scariest moments of his life, linking it to the damage his body had already suffered from years of pushing himself too far. He joked that he was marauding through mushroom land like a Super Mario Brothers when the seizure struck, but behind the humor there was real fear. He admitted he wasn't mentally or physically grounded during that chaotic chapter of his life. But the tragic story of Rick Ross ain't just about surviving seizures or dodging death. It's about a man who built an entire empire from nothing and almost watched it all crumble because he never slowed down. The constant grind, the endless hustle, it nearly cost him everything. Yet as heavy as the health scares were, that wasn't the end of his problems. While Ross was battling his own body, the outside world was coming straight for him, and trust, they weren't playing fair. Ops, rumors, snakes in his circle, the pressure was non-stop. And if his health struggles weren't enough, the universe seemed to test him even more. On January 28, 2013, his 37th birthday, things turned deadly serious. Ross became the target of a drive-by shooting in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Imagine that, one of the biggest rappers alive, celebrating his birthday, and suddenly bullets start flying. It was another brutal reminder that fame can't shield you from danger, no matter how big your empire is. Let that sink in for a second. The man was literally celebrating another year of life when somebody tried to take it from him. Out of nowhere, shots started flying from another car, and Ross had to flip straight into survival mode. He slammed the gas on his Rolls-Royce, trying to escape the ambush, but in the chaos, he lost control and crashed into an apartment building. Miraculously, neither he nor the woman riding with him was hurt, at least not physically. But the mental scars? Those hit different. Imagine being hunted down on your own birthday, bullets aimed your way while you're just trying to celebrate another year breathing. That kind of trauma doesn't fade overnight. The shooting came right after online death threats from the gangster disciples who claimed Ross had disrespected their symbols and demanded money. Ross saw it for what it was, straight extortion, and he wasn't backing down. Instead, he doubled up on security, rolling with protection everywhere he went. Still, the message was loud and clear. That boss life came with a target on his back, no question about it. These violent moments, stacked with the non-stop industry beefs, pushed his stress to new extremes. And that stress didn't just mess with his head, it wrecked his health too. It turned into a vicious cycle. More stress meant more substance use, more substances meant more health breakdowns, and those breakdowns made him even more vulnerable. And speaking of beef, we gotta talk about the war that defined a whole decade of hip-hop. No cap, this one shook the entire culture. That clip you just heard, that's Tony Yayo breaking down exactly how the legendary Rick Ross and 50 Cent beef got started, all over what was seen as a disrespectful look at the 2008 BET Awards. Just one stare was enough to light up one of hip-hop's longest-running wars, a feud that's been burning strong for over 15 years. By January 2009, the tension exploded when Ross dropped Mafia music, calling 50 directly and clowning him over his child support drama and the mysterious house fire involving his ex. Ross was swinging heavy, but 50 came back with pure nuclear energy, releasing Officer Ricky.
Ross and 50, right? Ross is not, they got a beef because 50 didn't say what up to him. That's just a New York thing.
Right.
Like one of the awards. I wasn't there, but that's how it sparred.
Right.
Nigga ain't say what's up to me. Cause down south, y'all have more of a...
Yeah, hey, how you doing?
Go ahead, try me. And that move changed everything. The track didn't just diss Ross, it exposed him. The world suddenly found out that before Rick Ross became the biggest boss, William Roberts had worked as a correctional officer from 1995 to 1997. In a culture where street credibility means everything, that revelation hit like a bombshell. The internet went wild, and for a while, Ross's whole image was hanging by a thread. But 50 didn't stop there. He went full savage mode. He dropped a string of Officer Ricky cartoons, straight up turning Ross into a running joke across the industry. Then he turned up the disrespect even more by interviewing Tia Kemp, one of Ross's baby mamas, and letting her air him out on camera. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get messier, 50 hit one of the coldest moves in rap beef history, leaking a private tape involving another of Ross's baby mamas, Lastonia Leviston, and even adding his own commentary to it. It was pure violation, a calculated shot meant to humiliate Ross and drag the feud to a whole new level of disrespect. That whole situation turned into one of the ugliest, most personal rap feuds the game had ever seen. Court cases flew, headlines exploded, and both camps kept firing shots, on wax and in real life. Ross, though, never folded. Instead of letting it break him, he flipped the chaos into motivation, stacking more wins, more records, and proving that no matter how deep the hate got, the biggest boss was still standing tall. Years went by and the beef cooled down, but the scars stayed. The 50 versus Ross saga became a hip-hop history lesson on pride, power, and the price of fame. It showed just how far the industry will go when egos clash and reputations are on the line. Through all that madness, the seizures, the near-death scares, the shootouts, and the public humiliation, Rick Ross came out stronger, sharper, and more self-aware than ever before. Fast forward to today, and Ross isn't just a rapper, he's a mogul, a businessman, and a symbol of survival. From hospital beds to hit records, from public beefs to private battles, his story screams one thing loud and clear. No matter how many times life knocks you down, real bosses rise back up. So, what do you think? Did Rick Ross earn that biggest boss title for real? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let's talk about it. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment to keep the channel growing. More wild hip-hop stories and deep dives coming your way soon. Stay tuned.